DBJ here for Tubers. Here's another narrative storyteller secret. All right. I love to foreshadow. Another way of using it, imagine giving your players a newspaper, right? So an example would be that I give them some clues as to what may happen either in this adventure or elements of the bigger story, and it gives me the opportunity to explain to the players without doing a whole lot of exposition, right? So an exposition is like, spending an hour and a half explaining the world, and I really don't want to do that. But what I do is I set up the tone and imagery of the environment that they're in. So an example would be, let's take environment. I'll say, as you head towards town, you see the castle walls, the mud splashing up the hooves of your mounts, and caking around the wheels of the cart as you pass by those that are coming and going into the very large town. A very heavy rain has pelted the area for the last 3 days. And this is a minor reprieve as you see that the clouds above you are pregnant and dark, threatening to spill yet another inch and a half, filling the rivers and overflooding them and plunging the area into dark and mysterious thunderstorms. All right, that's just off the top of my head. So, well, why would I describe that, right? Like, why? I mean, what's the point? Well, I love manipulating the environment, and it gives me the opportunity because right now I've said, okay, it rained a lot in the past. It's probably going to rain again. And if I decide as a game master, I can pull that out of my hat without forcing it into the story. So let me give you a second part of that descriptor. As you enter into town, you see that most, if not all the residents, those that live here, the natives, are walking around with dark colors, black bands around their arm, dark storm cloaks about their shoulders. You notice that this is not just because of the dreary weather we've been having. Maybe it has something to do with a mourning or a death. You're unsure what has happened, but there's definitely a pall of grief and despair over this town. Okay, so, well, why would I say that? Well, again, I'm dropping this into the story because I can, as a game master, I can pull this out anytime. Maybe the player characters have the opportunity, and again, this has a little bit to do with dice fudging, right? So, if the player characters appeal to the better nature of the residents, for example, they ask around about, has someone passed away? Why are you wearing these things? And then maybe the player characters go to a tavern or a shop or something, and they bring up the fact, hey, well, I'd like to show my respects. Is there any way that I can show my respects to the fallen? That could weigh the yes or no answer to whether the players can stay at the inn or get a discount from the local armory or persuade someone to give them some more information or find a ship that they can book to travel to this mysterious island. And this gives them a way to, for those who want to role play, to find out information, learn something about the town. If I want to, I can insert this information where someone goes to speak to the barmaid and the barmaid runs off crying with her dark scarf around her neck while she's serving drinks. And they're like, what the hell? Everybody's all sad and, what's going on? Maybe we should find out. Let's go to the town center and see what's going on. And it could be maybe a great warrior was put on is having their body prepared to be burned at, evenings in the evening. But what's making it worse is that if there's a torrential downpour, they won't be able to maybe light the fire, and this is even more disrespect for maybe a great hero. Or maybe there was a great hero, great paladin and knight, was very honorable, but the town found out that they committed a great sin. And so they're trying in their way to both show respect for this great hero, but at the same time saddened that they were corrupted at the end of their short but glorious life. And so this is my way of opening the world to the players. Sometimes they don't grab onto it, and that's all right. If I want to, I can quantum ogre the whole thing and just kind of force feed it to them. But I prefer it to be done organically, and give them about 3 hints. They go to the tavern, they see people sad there. They go to the inn, see people sad there. They go to get equipment, they see somebody sad there. Okay, now they're getting hit over the head. Now your players are like, okay, what the hell's going on? So, as far as the environment goes as well, for the rain and such, let's say the player characters leave the town and they are harassed by goblinoids. You got to have the goblinoids, right? Your orcs, your goblins, your hobgoblins, your bugbears, ogres. You can throw some ogres in there too, I think. Gnolls count, I feel. And they get into a fight. And, if you don't add any descriptive elements, it becomes rather boring. So okay, I'm on a gray plain with a white sky, and we're just shooting. I hack, they hack me. I throw something at them, they throw something at me. By me adding the environmental elements, I can add difficulties in there, and I'm going to get to the last point. I can add difficulties in there where the characters are fighting ankle deep in mud. Maybe it's my opportunity to have the sky open up, and it starts to downpour, and now it just makes it worse. The ground is slippery. You're fighting on a wooded hill. In order to hold on, you start slipping down the hill. Now you've got to grab onto a tree. The gnolls are hiding behind trees and throwing javelins and using crossbows behind the trees. So maybe a player character wants to climb up into a tree and use that as a vantage point and maybe some cover. Use the environment. So I love opening up my scenes with a little bit of detail about the greater world, whether it's a political thing. You've noticed that with the new king in power, that taxes have risen and the populace, although upset, is on the verge of revolt, and that the king's men are unaware of this, but the population is getting more and more agitated. And the player characters may have nothing to do with it. They're like, okay, whatever. Right? I just need the map to go to the dungeon. But later on in the game, those elements can come up. Maybe the economy has changed, and so now there's more pickpockets. Maybe there is, as the people want to revolt, they are looking for warriors to help them in their revolt against the king. And so now the player characters are going, look, I just wanted to go on adventures and go into dungeons and kill stuff. I'm not a political emissary. Like, I don't care about what the king has to do. So when the player characters either accept or refuse, now they're pulled into a greater storyline. So let's say the player characters are like, I could care less about the politics and stuff like that. Well, maybe now the enemies of the king are against the player characters. You get no discounts. All the prices are double. You can't stay here. Our rooms are booked, even though all the lights are off. I'm going to spit in your grog and give it to you. And the player character's like, what the hell? What did we do? And now the king may request their audience, like, oh, they're on my side. Please join me in my chambers. I would love to talk to you. We're always looking for great warriors and knowledgeable scholars and mystics and those of a religious bent who are willing to support the royal family. And the player characters are going, dude, you're just an asshole. I don't want to have anything to do with you. Don't touch me. But it's a great way to draw people in with just a slight opening. And you don't have to use that information at all, but just open up with a little foreshadow. Now, foreshadowing can be done in another way, and that is, it can be done very subtly, but can have a great effect. So, for example, you have a storyline where you have a Medusa, and she's got her long serpentine tail, and she has a brigade of orcs, and she has a bodyguard that's an ogre that has a displacer beast as a pet. And You want to warn the player characters what they're going to go up against, but you're not sure how to go about doing it except smacking them over the head. Well, you can incorporate things like a strange collection of statues outside the city gates. Community members that were attacked by a beast, maybe a tiger or a lion or some foul beast, but they're describing it as a panther. You can have an opportunity where they go in a town, and the name of the tavern is the Orc's Rage. And when they go into their room, there's a painting on the wall with some grand warriors running away from a giant ogre. And you're like, that's foreshadowing? Well, yes, in some ways, yes. It's giving little clues, and of course, when you're that subtle player character, that's just going to wash right over their head. Like, who the hell makes a painting of warriors running away from an ogre and sticks it up in a room? But they may take the painting down, inspect it, and they're thinking something's around it, not knowing that the painting itself is the clue. But you can do all those things. If you have a tavern named the Red Dragon, and then later on they go up into a mountainous area, and it's a dormant volcano, and so they're going to end up figuring out there's probably a red dragon. But this also allows the game master to avoid situations where the player characters are like, oh, you pulled this crap out of your ass and just surprised us with it. You really didn't have an idea of putting a red dragon in there, or a Medusa, or an ogre. You just thought just throwing it in there. It's like, no. I'm foreshadowing what could possibly happen. So, foreshadowing is giving little hints, little trinkets about what can happen in the future. I just use it as a narrative tool to add some elements. I also like to bring it back. There's I'll pick it up right now. Dungeon Master's Guide. One section in there called framing events, and those are events that happen in a town or a city. Sometimes they're festivals, funerals, executions, graduations, and I love throwing in those little elements, especially if it involves the player characters. Maybe there's a celebration about these grand heroes that drove off this goblinoid army, and the player characters figure out, wow, that's about us. But the story has changed a little bit, and so none of the populace recognizes the player characters as those grand heroes. Like, there's no way they could be those grand heroes. But man, we're going to have a party because they freed the land. And so this also makes it quite a bit more personal, so the player characters feel like they have an impact on the world. So anyway, Narrative Secrets Revealed. This is DBJ, and as always, I love creative things, and I try not to destroy that organic element at the table if I can, and hopefully this will help you out.